I mean that in the nicest possible way.
Okay, well, we are live on air now, I think. So thank you for joining us, if anyone's there. I'm sure you are, yeah. But on tonight's Hangout, we are going to conclusively, unambiguously, and exceptionally clearly define exactly what social learning is, informal learning, formal learning, how all of them fit together, how you can apply them to turn your business into a world-leading organisation, all in less than 30 minutes. So, Martin, could you start, please?
Well, it's funny you should say that, Sam, because I might have a few problems with doing that. And I think the problem starts with this MOOC and what we've dug up, really. So I'm going to say I'd love to have done. I think you may have maybe oversold it, right? That'd be my thing.
It's possible I'm being a little bit flippant, yeah.
Well, possibly. However, it was no. So I think in terms of where we've got to, we had a fascinating Twitter chat last week, which I think kind of, for me, just apart from making my head melt, because I'm kind of, as I'm going through the MOOC myself, I'm thinking more and more deeply, and I'm spurred on to think in different ways by what people are sharing and reflecting on themselves. Then there was the Twitter chat in which I was quite, some of my thinking was quite challenged, actually. So in terms of turning your organisation into a world-beating organisation with social learning and understanding what that means, I think we're quite a long way off from that, actually. And the only reason I say that is because of what I've seen so far, and in some senses what some of the conversation was about in that Twitter chat. So I don't know what you thought about that Twitter chat, but what I'm thinking in particular is, and maybe it's a semantic thing, but I think it's worth thinking about, is some comments were like, why is this so complex when it's so simple, right? Now for me, that sort of comment was focused on the fact that human beings are social creatures. You know, from our times on the savannah way back when, we've done stuff together, so we're social, and the process of learning is a social one, and I don't think anyone would deny that. But is that what we're talking about when it comes to social learning? I'm not entirely sure that we are, because and this is the thing that challenges me, is that the business tends to still stick with things like e-learning, which we know is massive. It is mostly not a social experience. It's an isolating experience, and it's not a particularly good one. And the industry as a whole has bought into that. And I'm thinking, well, if we always knew that this was a social process, what on earth were we doing buying into that? I don't get it. So on the one hand, you've got people saying, well, it's so simple, don't have to make it too complex. And on the other hand, the industry has bought into ways of doing this, which is completely alien to the way we learn. So what I'm trying to say is that I think it is a little bit more complex, because we wouldn't have done the things we've done that go against sort of the grain of the brain, if you like. So I found that Twitter chat illuminating for that reason, actually. And then I kind of got back into the theory and think that actually we're talking about lots of different things at once. So, for example, we might be thinking about the fact that social is the antithesis of formal learning, and that's just not true. I think we've done formal learning very badly because it hasn't enabled the social element that needs to happen. So, and that's quite challenging again, because actually you can read a lot that says formal, get out of the classroom. There's nothing to see here. There's nothing to learn here anymore. And it's like, well, is that really true? Were we ever any good at it in the first place? I don't know. It kind of is raising lots of questions. I'm talking too much. What's your reflection?
Yeah, I was kind of like you a bit. I don't know. I was always a little bit sort of reticent about tackling this topic in a MOOC in this way, and I think that was because I had this sort of sense that we might see what we saw in that Twitter chat the other week, where there's a lot of people just thinking a lot of people who take the line, like you say, it's like breathing. It's like drinking water. It's something you do every day, you do all the time, and it's an essential part of living. Why are we overcomplicating it by pulling out theories from 50 years ago and going down that route? So I was kind of expecting it in a way. And at the same time, I don't know if I was oversensitive to that, because some people who, when I put that question back into the MOOC, didn't read it that way, or saw maybe a more nuanced view than I'm giving now. And so it's difficult with perspective to say how it really was. I'm almost quite tempted to go, sort of tempted, but sort of too busy at the same time, to go through all the tweets and analyse them in a bit more detail. Because to me, and I think you said it afterwards, it felt like people applying a kind of fixed mindset approach to stuff, and that I know is something that most people would hate to be labelled with who were involved in it. But it was closed off to ideas that they probably didn't understand in as much detail as they could. And that was one of the other reasons that I did want to go and do this MOOC, because I didn't understand these ideas in any great detail. It's kind of a vague awareness. It's a good excuse just to go and block off a bit of time to go and learn something more about them. So yeah, it was a weird one, and I kind of participated, I think, quite a bit for the first half of it, and then I was just sort of sitting back reflecting as it was going on, and I didn't really know what to add to it. I just became a kind of an observer in it. So it was a bit of a strange one, yeah.
I think one thing that has it did make me go away and think about what all of this again, and I come at this from a different perspective, in the sense of I'm not a sort of L&D professional. I've done learning related stuff in organisations, but not as someone within the function. And I thought, but I have come from a sort of content and as a journalist, so a kind of communication type of angle. And I was just thinking about the fact that also what the big change right now that is framing some of what we're talking about is technology has enabled us to access knowledge and content in a way that we never could 20 years ago, and also access people and access conversation around it. So that has completely changed how we get our hands on, or connect to other people and can find stuff that might be useful to us, and that's all around us, and it's in all of our devices. Now, I'm not saying that means that that's social learning at all, but I think that's an interesting context in which this is taking place. And so that Twitter chat also made me think, well, are we sort of talking cross purposes a lot of the time, and does that matter? And I think you're right, because I think the one thing that did come out of that Twitter chat was the fact that this idea of, well, what about evidence and theories, and what about what we do know, and is there a danger of just carrying on acting as if we didn't know things when we did? People have already done that research, and that could help us stop doing the same things badly, and we could move on. So there was an interesting line of inquiry around, well, do we need this research or not? And I thought that was quite interesting. And I think, and I also take the fact that people, myself included, find it quite hard to access academic research, because it's seemingly written for other academics, which makes it on occasion quite impenetrable. But I think one of the participants on the MOOC wrote a blog post which I thought was quite interesting, and they said, well, maybe it's the responsibility of those of us in the profession who do understand more academic research to reflect and make it a bit more accessible for practitioners. So I think that was quite an interesting way of looking at it.
Yeah, no, I agree. That was a really useful post. I think it was Kate Pinner whose post that was. If anyone's looking at that, you can find it in the Explore Social stream. I'm just flicking through that now because there was something earlier today which came out Will Thalheimer, who is quite sort of renowned as one of those people who does translate research into useful, sort of actionable things for people in L&D to use. And he's just started a new campaign, a new site called the Debunker Club, which sets out to try and fill some of that need by encouraging people to come together who are interested in taking evidence-based approaches to debunking some of these myths. And I think they're starting. You can sign up for it on debunker.club. Again, it's on the Explore Social stream, and I'll retweet it again after this. And they're doing you have to sign up to these different agree to these different things that are all sort of slightly tongue-in-cheek, I think. And in April, the first week in April every year, they're going to have a kind of a community approach to debunking certain myths. I think the first one is around the cone of experience. And it's a really cool, a timely, interesting approach. So I definitely signed up for that. I hope I get accepted. I'm not sure if I will. There's a stringent acceptance criteria by the look of it. But that's something I would definitely check out if you're interested in that. So how do you think? I mean, we're just over halfway now in terms of the MOOC itself. We're over halfway. How do you feel it's going in terms of what we set out to create at the beginning versus to where we are at the moment?
Well, I think we were talking about this just before we went on air about the fact that we've gone for a timed approach to the content. So we have a plan and we release content every week. And I think that's become quite interesting for us because our thinking was around the fact that will there be a core of people travelling together, and will that lead to greater amounts of participation, and will that be helpful to people to be going through together? Because we know that in previous MOOCs that we've done, a bulk of people have gone through them after it was sort of live, if you like, or synchronous, and when we were there to facilitate it. And interestingly, we're seeing again, even though we've got that, we've got people that we do have a core, but we've got people coming in all the time, and and then that's quite interesting if you're facilitating it, because I'm thinking, well, we started with, so we've got our eyes over here because that's where the core is. It's week 3, and in actual fact, we've got lots of people coming in who are starting at week 1, and actually we need to be there for them as well. So I, from a facilitator's point of view, I think it has thrown up some challenges around that. So where you need to be, and you actually need to be pretty much everywhere all the time. And yeah, so it's that's been quite interesting. I think the other thing for me, and I'll probably say this all the time, so forgive me if I'm a bit of a stuck record, is the insight that people share just blows me away. This is why it's been kind of brain-meltingly, challenging for me over the last week because of the depth of comment. There are some, people bring their experience with them and their knowledge, and there are lots of very knowledgeable, experienced people who come from different angles on this topic. And I just think, well, it might not seem a complex topic, but when you actually get tucked into it, you realise that, I don't know, many brains versus one is just an amazing thing, I think. But I have said that before.
Yeah, you're right. I think it kind of, as we were talking about this earlier as well, how the nature of online social communication has changed just over the last 10 years, where everyone used to, not everyone, but quite a lot more people used to blog in a different style to the way they do now. One that was maybe more, that they took more time over it, and it was less about putting out half-baked ideas which is good still. I think people should do that. Absolutely, it's absolutely useful to that. But there was more kind of fully formed knowledge, and there was a lot more conversation in the comments under blogs, and comments under blogs don't have that sort of limitation that we have on Twitter. And as a result, I think you got more kind of challenging discussions going on. Whereas we kind of touched on it in the L&D Insight lunch Twitter chat that went on today. Do people feel comfortable in challenging ideas that people put out there? And it doesn't seem that way at the moment. But what I feel we've got in the MOOC at the moment is actually there are people who are willing to challenge ideas. Everyone's challenging constructively, and it's great. They're challenging us. We're challenging them. And it is really, I've learned so much from the people on there and the things that they've been sharing on there. We've got some questions coming in. Right, hang on a second. Quick question from Tony Parkin. The need to be everywhere as a facilitator. Do remember that bilocation is one of the qualifications for sainthood. But yeah, just coming back on your point there, as one of the challenges, it's been really hard. So just maintaining that energy and trying to maintain that sort of standard that we set ourselves as facilitators. So I started off in the first week, like specifically trying to at least comment to every single person that said something in that first couple of items, the kind of welcome thing, just to say, hey, welcome, thanks for joining us. Just to sort of, I think those little things make a big difference when you first join. It's like someone recognizing that you're there, and that's fine. But for the first kind of bit, it's easy to kind of keep an eye on people, even though there was 300 odd people to start with, maybe 200 who are active in the course. Then they start to get spread out, and so your attention wanders, and you're trying to think about the VUCA aspect again, which may have passed on, and all you're trying to think about, this talk of informal and formal social learning, or the social learning theories, where you flick back to someone talking about Ben's rant about social learning. It's quite hard to maintain the energy to do that effectively as a facilitator. That's what I found. And then I think the other thing is, it's a MOOC, and like all MOOCs, life gets in the way of them sometimes. I mean, you and I have both been away from our normal routines this weekend. It's half term, kids are off. I was away on holiday for a few days, so I kind of missed out on some stuff. And then it's trying to catch up, trying to sort of figure out where everything is. And you've been away too. It is difficult, and so if we can't maintain it as facilitators, I think you kind of have to have sort of element of, it doesn't, you don't have to be there all the time for everything. But yes, it's a big challenge.
I think it also, I think there's something around scale as well. I mean, we've got hundreds, not thousands. And I do wonder what that looks like when you've got thousands. Having dropped into those kind of ex-MOOCs, where it's, they're pretty much like a, physical course. You kind of, or you just consume content. You can get into the conversations, but I think what you're describing and what we're trying to do is far more, not community, but a bit more, we liken it to a party, and we're trying to create an environment where some interesting things are going to happen, and that matters to us. I don't know what that looks like at scale, but it certainly becomes challenging even when the timed bit has kind of thrown us a bit, in terms of just like it sets some more challenges for us. But I think that's just, if anyone's going to be running these kind of things, I think that's just the sort of thing to think about. I mean, and as you say, it also has its own life force, and also who are we to say what that experience is like if you've only just come into it, because we know that in previous ones people have had a valuable experience and we haven't been there. So there's quite a lot of stuff going on, and it's kind of hard to know if there is just one way to be. I'm not sure that there is.
No, you're right, and it's just hard sometimes to find the time. I think in that first week I found more time to kind of reflect on what people are saying, and the last week or so it's been just trying to keep up, to be honest. And it's only been sort of this afternoon that I've found that time to maybe have a few more insights about things, and things have started to click a little bit more. So yeah, Rachel was just commenting saying yes, the challenge of the challenges of any kind of open program. And yes, Nancy was saying, why can't I see the questions? Because it's the Q&A thing, and I'm not sure if there's a better way of doing that. But I can't see question flow. Can we just use chat instead? We'll try and figure that one out for next time. The chat doesn't show up within the Hangout on Air window, I don't think. I may just be ignorant of how to do that. But just to quickly answer these. Nancy also asks, this is a question for you, Martin. What has been the most interesting things you said in the first 15 minutes?
Yeah, the most interesting thing I said in the first 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Of this hangout.
Yeah.
Probably. Well, what I consider to be the most interesting thing. Probably the stuff. I think the stuff around the Twitter chat really. And what you know, I'm going to stick to my guns on the thing that people were saying. There were lots of people on that chat saying that social is not complex. Why are we overthinking it? And at the same time, my example was we've as an industry massively invested in e-learning, which is a very isolating and, I think we all pretty much know, not very good experience, and certainly whether it leads to any kind of learning outcome, I haven't got a clue really. Any e-learning I've done never did. And so that idea that actually we think of social as being a human thing, and yet, if we knew all that all the time, why did we invest in e-learning in the way that we did and continue to do so? I don't understand that. So I think actually that sort of difference, that's one of the, I think that's still quite an interesting thing, and that's one of the things I was talking about.
Good question here from Tony. I like this. Do you think there is a cohort split between academics and practitioners with different approaches to the MOOC? And I think to some extent there is a different approach in terms of how they're used to learning and their focus, or just their interest maybe. But I mean, I'm a practitioner. You're not an L&D practitioner, are you? But neither of us are academics, and I think we can still have an appreciation for the theory side of it, but probably don't look at it in quite as discerning a way as those who come from an academic background. What do you think?
I'll tell you one thing I don't understand. I've got to go and do a couple of lectures at university in a few weeks' time, and the format is just lecture, and I think that's amazing that I have to go and stand up for an hour and talk. I have to sort of share the thing, and to be honest, there's probably far more interesting ways of getting that information from me than me standing up, although I try and do a good show. But I think the academic, I think it's interesting because the context is quite different, is my experience. I've found it, I think it has, I don't know, Tony, you will know better than I, but I think there's just a set of accepted rules around how it works. And I think the challenge at the moment is that practice is outstripping and outpacing academic activity and research, and that's what we see in this MOOC, I think, and that's kind of what was coming out of that Twitter chat. I think I'm not sure I'm answering the question, but I think there are some differences there, and I think what I'm interested in is how practitioners and the academic world can work together more closely. That seems to be the sweet spot right now, because practice is people are doing stuff and the research always lags. What's how you got some background sounds?
Yeah, sorry, I was just grimacing there because Trevor, my staffy, keeps wandering about, and he decided that was a good time to play with a ball. So sorry about that.
I'm sure. I don't think I've answered that question, Tony. I feel. I don't know. What do you think, Sam?
I think I could.
Not
I
whether
mean,
I've
the problem is we don't actually
answered.
know what the background of everyone is. I mean, well, we can get an idea of it without doing some proper, more rigorous research into it. It's hard to say really without generalising. Um, so let me just pop up one from Nancy here, who I think is
But I
replying
do.
as well.
My sorry. My final thing on that is that this is the one MOOC we've done which has been really in the academic world, I think, more than the
Mm.
others, and that's been really, really fascinating in itself. So it means that there are more conversations between people who are more academic um, than previous ones, and I think that the content is, kind of more academic in some ways because it's theory based. So I think it's just been that's been a different experience, I think, and a good one.
Yeah, it's unusual that actually the two worlds collide, isn't it? So from that perspective, I think it's been valuable. Just going to pop a response from Nancy to what you were saying about why e-learning is the way it is and has no social. I don't know. This social gives up control. I'm not sure if it. I think that's is that one of the reasons why it's still that way, or is that an excuse? I wonder if it's just actually about the difficulties of changing cultures and I was one of the things the sort of insights that I had today, the things that sort of occurred to me was this element of culture which we haven't necessarily touched on, and I wonder if really we talk about we want to do more social learning, we want to improve social learning, we want to encourage social learning at organisations, however you want to describe it, but unless we understand the culture of the organisation, I think a lot of social learning initiatives are going to fail. I mean, some of the advice is to go and find out where it's happening already and just support it. But there are so many different ways that you can do that. I think you have to do something to understand the culture before you go any further with it. And one of the things that sprung to mind off the back of that was some of Dave Gray's work on culture mapping, which I think might be a very useful tool for doing something like that. Again, some of that's been shared on the Explore Social Twitter hashtag, and we'll share it in some other fields as well. I shall have a quick scan through, see if there's any more questions, and then we are just about out of time. Sorry about the noise there, Bruno. As I said, that was Trevor. It's not my fault, his.
I would say quickly about the e-learning stuff. I just, anyone who, I think we all know the truth about it. That's the point. It's if the big headline on e-learning was it saves money. That was the big thing, and it scales. Whether it works or not is beside the point. And if you look at all the compliance stuff, look what you have to do to be compliant. I think some of the regulatory bodies are expecting a lot more from the training now, or beginning to. Because you look at the financial crisis, we said it would never happen again. Then there was LIBOR, and now look at HSBC. I mean, I presume millions has been spent in those organisations on compliance training. It's like this stuff still happens. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of so. Yeah, I think that's an interesting area. A bit, but I think the culture stuff is actually the reason why it doesn't happen. It's a lot easier to spend a few million quid putting it online and getting some passes at the end than it is tackling the culture that might enable some more effective learning.
So I just want to highlight something Tony said, and that people would like to join in more with the conversation, and we would love you to do that, and it's absolutely possible. We just need to know that you want to get involved, and we can send you the link and you can join us on here. So if anyone would like to do that for next week's chat, I will email you exactly when it's going to be. Last time it was on a Sunday afternoon at about 4:30 GMT, but we can change that. We can flex that around a bit. So I'll put an email invitation out in the next email that we send out for the course. And if anyone does want to come online and chat with us, we would love that. That would be much more entertaining than me and him talking. So Thank you.
Sure.
No offense, Martin. Thank you for joining us. And thank you for the kind words about Trevor, Nancy. And yeah, we will see you online, and we will be sending out details of tomorrow's Twitter chat, which is at 8:30 p.m. in the morning. Hope you can join us. If not, we will see you on some other platform sometime soon. Thank you very much.